Going on, guys? I'm all painless, and today is a good day because I've got some Dunkin's coffee, and more importantly here we have the latest release from Maketoys' remaster line, and of course I'm talking about Despotron, which is a third-party attempt here at a masterpiece-inspired Megatron. Now right off the bat, I wasn't really too psyched about this figure. A lot of the promotional pictures and videos, they didn't really wow me. And I think a big part of it was just the proportions, like the bigger shoulders and legs. And the head sculpt always just seemed a little bit off to me. But I think that's changed a little bit now having it in hand. And we'll touch more on those different aspects. The other reason, too, was that I was a fairly happy X-Transbots Apollyon owner. And for the most part, I was fairly satisfied with that figure up until the last week or so, where I had a little bit of a mishap with that figure, and I'm not going to dwell on that too much, but needless to say, I have a need now for a masterpiece Megatron for my shelf. So, lo and behold, we have Despotron, despite my initial reservations about the figure. So let's go ahead and jump into this review and see if he can actually fill that Megatron void for my masterpiece shelf. First things first, quick look at the packaging. Fairly standard from the remaster line from Maketoys. We got the little logo down there, the silver chromed finish, some nice photo work on the front, sides, back. You can see all the different sort of dynamic posing and stuff going on there, which is really cool. Even has some pictures here for the 4 different face sculpts that come with the figure itself. But pretty standard stuff. This reminds me of their Gundog or Hound packaging that came before. Accessories are rather limited, although we do get a nice energy mace sort of setup here. Plugs on to only one of the 2 hands. We'll show this off. It's clear plastic, looks really nice, sculpted very well. Has a super long metal chain, which arguably is probably too long for this weapon. Although the cool thing is that you can actually pop out that screw, split this apart, and then, put a chunk of this chain length inside the actual ball, which gives it probably a better length and then also a little bit more weight to the weapon itself. So, something you can definitely check out and try out for yourself and see how you want to get that all set up. An orange plug, not really an accessory, but depending on who you buy your figure from, this hopefully will just pop right out of the gun barrel off his back. And luckily mine didn't have any glue, so nice and easy for me. And I mentioned the head sculpts. We'll show off the one that's installed, but you do get a laughing face option, a menacing, gritting the teeth face right there. This is the one that comes pre-installed. It's kind of a stoic, stern-looking face. Looks pretty good. Nice metallic red painted eyes. And then lastly, this isn't an accessory, but worth showing off because, as a disclaimer, I have actually replaced the hands on my figure with the Apollyon hands, because I wanted the hyper-articulated hand look for this figure. But these are very sort of standard masterpiece-esque. This will come pre-installed, and you do have the single pin hinged at the base knuckle, with an additional individually articulated pointer finger, with an additional point of articulation or an extra knuckle joint there. They work well enough, just not what I'm looking for my figure. And then lastly, 2 instruction booklets here. I guess they thought the transformation was complicated enough to warrant 2 of these, but the transformation is actually fairly intuitive, and once you do it once or twice, you will never ever use these again. And of course, here is our Decepticon leader, Despotron, and man, he looks pretty sharp. Limited paint application across because mostly he is that silver finish. The silver paint is very crisp and well applied though, and we do have some accents like the red and blue and yellow along the abdomen there. And then again, that very clean head sculpt, that metallic red eye finish there as well, which looks pretty good. We'll take a quick peek at this head sculpt though. This is the 4th option with that little smirk on his face right there. Looks pretty good. The helmet, again, was one of the things that threw me off originally about this figure, and it still does irk me a little bit. I'm not really a big fan of that sculpted detail along that sort of the top or the crest of his helmet right there, with the little notches along the sides and that front detail. It looks good in person, I guess. It looks a little bit better, but not quite what I had hoped for out of a head sculpt. Another thing that kind of irks me is if you look at the forehead, there is a clearly defined ridge between the helmet and the forehead, but the forehead really juts out really far from the actual face sculpt. And I think I would have preferred that forehead set back further and the actual lip or the ridge of the helmet protrude further out, or just, again, inset that forehead further back in. And that would have created more of a defined, a more traditional looking head sculpt. And obviously that's due to the fact that the helmet, which can pop right off, has the forehead actually sculpted in. You can see the detail right there, that little ridge I'm talking about. I think if they had actually designed the face to have the forehead attached, they really could have gotten a much cleaner look that I'd be looking for specifically. But, you know, again, it looks a lot better in person. I don't think it photographs very well, unfortunately. And that's been one of the biggest complaints, or stylistic complaints, that people have had about this figure. But while we have this pulled off, again, it's just held on by two little pegs and these little notches that slide down. We can actually pull off the head sculpt, or face sculpt, which is attached via a rectangular peg, and we can throw on a replacement here, the more stern, neutral look, and pop the helmet right back on. Super easy. I do want to point out, you want to be very careful when transforming this. I have a nice little paint scuff there on my helmet. No idea how that happened. Maybe that was a small tool I was using, but yeah, I have a big nick there in the helmet now, which is kind of a bummer. Speaking of nicks, this one does also have a slight vertical scratch below that little tab on that lower bar, and that seems to be the case on a lot of these Despotron figures that have come out. I've seen quite a few reviews of this figure, and that seems to be pretty standard at this point. I haven't seen too many without that little scuff. So I don't recall doing that myself. I think it's just coming from the factory like that. I'm not sure what's causing it, but just be aware there might be some paint scuffs there on that lower chest piece. Articulation's pretty good though. We have a ball jointed head, which gets you all the rotation you need, plus a decent head waggle. We have fully articulated shoulders, and if you actually pop these down for a different look, you can actually get a full extension upwards, which is awesome. And you get a full rotation. It's ratcheted. They can actually extend in and out depending on the look that you're going for or the articulation that you need. And you know what? This is a shoulder joint done right. Not like the Apollyon ball joints that are just a complete mess. Upper bicep swivel, single hinged elbow joints, but they give you a full crunch there. And you do get some painted and sculpted detail here, which kind of fills in the gap a little bit. Looks okay. The hands I did mention I replaced. These are X-Transbots Apollyons. Fully articulated fingers. Really easy swap to do. You literally just unscrew these two screws here. You replace the mushroom peg original hands. Just pop them right off. And these basically just crunch over that mushroom peg and you screw it back in. But super easy mod to do in case you have a hyper-articulated hand that you want to slip on there instead. A super tight waist joint. When you get this out of the box, you're going to be scared to actually move that because it's such a tight connection. But over time, it's going to loosen up for you. Hip skirts are on a multi-hinged system here, so you can kind of move these around as you need to. And the front skirts do lift up, which gives you the options to ratchet the leg forward, ratchet the leg back. Nice ratchets, by the way. Upper thigh swivels, which are toleranced super tight, so be careful with these. A double jointed knee, which bends at the top and bottom, but they give you a huge crunch of a knee joint right there, which is awesome. And lastly, we have ankles, which give you a nice rocker from left to right, as well as forward to back. We have a movable heel spur here with the rubber padding, which is super sweet, and a nice little premium touch there for the figure. But all in all, he has all the articulation that you would want out of a masterpiece figure and then some, because you even get ab crunch. A 2-click ab crunch. That's pretty rare for figures, and they do that one extremely well. He really feels like almost an action figure slash transforming robot, which is really impressive. You don't really kind of get that vibe from a lot of different figures, and it's especially impressive coming from, say, Apollyon, which felt more like a statue, you know, with some ratchets, some decent ratchets and articulation. But I mean, this guy poses exceptionally well. We'll show that off more later on, but there's just a lot you can do. The joints feel great, maybe a little bit over toleranced in the the upper thighs and stuff, but I mean, for the most part, very impressive and a very fun robot to handle here. I do want to point out that the sliding mechanism on the knee is a little loose. As I'm posing it, you can see I just put it down right there. It kind of clicks or slides down instead of clicking solidly into place. This one actually feels a bit tighter, and it has been reported on a lot of different figures by folks out there. I know Diecast from RFC has done a tutorial on how to potentially fix this by maybe hammering that pin in here a little bit tighter. It seems to be more of just an assembly issue where the pin, which kind of locks that knee joint into place, just wasn't hammered in tight enough. I'm not going to demonstrate it here, but basically you could pop off these red inner leg panels, which are just held in by friction, and then you could carefully try to pin that or hammer that little pin in a bit tighter if you want to. But as long as you're careful with your figure and you just kind of adjust things, then you should be in good shape. And just for a quick size comparison there, you can see him with BB7 or BBQ Skywarp, the knockoff. We have Quake Wave from Cloud9, our Despotron there from Maketoys, and then we have an official Hasbro, Thundercracker, and Starscream. So he looks super nice on a Decepticon Masterpiece shelf. And I did want to point out that if you went this route for your Masterpiece Shockwave like I did, I think the big, brutish Quake Blast really aesthetically matches well with the Maketoys Megatron right here. Alright guys, so enough with the comparisons. Let's go ahead and get this sucker transformed into his alt mode and see how well that P38 little handgun actually translates to. And just an FYI, I probably will show off Optimus and maybe some other guys in my final thoughts next to Despotron here. So, slide off the gun barrel, split the wrist, and fold your hand inwards along this rotating joint. Very tight, so be careful. And then tab the hand back together. And just to show it off, if you want to attach this, that's it. Super, super easy. Split this hand apart as well. Undo this tab. Rotate your hand in. In my case, be exceptionally careful with those fingers. Flip that in. Repeg. And then rotate this piece 180. Now my favorite part of the transformation, pop open these shoulder joints, fold this up. This panel actually secures into the forearm, which completes a nice smooth surface here. Rotate the joint down, peg that in. Up, peg, rotate, push in. Now you can see the top of the gun sort of taking shape here. Coming to the back, we're going to address this back kibble, which is super clean by the way. Unfold, attach, unfold, plug in. We're going to rotate this barrel up, around, and peg that into place. And the tip of the gun, we can rotate that up. Coming down to the feet, condense the toes, flip in the heels. Extend these butt flaps out just to kind of get them out of the way more. It kind of helps you move them as you're transforming. Rotate your thighs 90 degrees. There we go. We come back here. Fold this back part down, this flap, which is going to reveal this hinge system with a silver cap on it. There we go. Fold that out and underneath for right now to get it out of the way. And then we can fold down this tab on the back of this leg and peg that into place. Push the feet in if you haven't already, and then we can actually slide the legs up like so. And then these will now peg together front to back. From here, we're going to unpeg this double hinge system here. And they're going to straighten out, and both these panels are going to lock into place on the front side of the gun handle. On this side, just a single panel. Flip this out, rock it back, peg it into place. Flip that piece open right there. And the next step will be to just get the torso unlocked. Unclip there as well. Before we go any further, let's go ahead and rock this chest bar down. And then this is going to fold down as well. Like so. Now with Megatron's upper body kind of standing vertical, we're going to handle this trigger section. So what we want to do now is get this trigger guard assembly rotated through. So with one finger, try to hold this trigger down, and we're going to rotate this section through, like so. Pretty simple, actually, when you do it a couple times. Let's go ahead and unpeg this bottom waist section. So now this whole body is going to sort of accordion out, which is great. And this is going to slide along this rail, allowing us to peg the front of this gun section into this now revealed trigger guard section. Just like so. That black section we had rotated out is going to plug into that red peg right there. And before we attach this peg and this peg into the base here, we need to get the crotch section handled. So rotate this up, fold it down, rotate this back so it's flush against there. Make sure when you compress this section down, you leave enough of a gap to allow this armature to slide in front. So it needs to be up like that to allow that to go in front of it. So we won't worry about that quite yet. What we can do next, though, is rotate this forward, and we can sort of decompress these hip skirts like so. Repeat over here as well. Fold that section out. We can kind of slide that in front for the time being. We're not going to worry about pegging that in yet. And before we go any further, we want to get this little tab pulled out. So let's go ahead and get this section pulled up. Might need a small screwdriver to get that in place. But with that all lined up sort of as is right here, we're going to take this peg and plug them into the waist assembly that's been exposed. Alright, so with that all kind of plugged in place, your next step here is to rotate this in, and now we can kind of compress these hip skirts downwards. Bring this up, rotate the silver part in front, and now the back of the hip skirt is going to plug into this silver portion here, and then this top peg goes into this protruding piece here. And on the front of the hip skirt here, we have a little peg which will slide into this assembly that we slid upwards, and then this silver piece actually pegs in right here. So we'll just go ahead and get this all sort of squeezed together. On this side, same thing, two pegs on the back. That all squeezes together there. And then it squeezes together again on that front assembly. And then we can kind of just clean things up. Alright, from here we can rotate the trigger guard down, rotate it 180. And then lastly, just fold this down. It is pretty tough. I've been kind of dinging up the plastic back here with a small tool, but do your best to pull that open. Make sure his head is rotated 90 degrees and facing forward. You can rotate that in to that chamber and then reclose that back up. Slide this back, locking that into place. Take the arm cannon, which becomes his sight there for the handgun. And there we have Despotron in his P38 handgun. And I think it looks pretty good. It's definitely the weaker of the two modes. I can't speak for realism or, proportions and stuff and how closely or not this relates to the actual handgun. But I mean, it looks pretty good. I think the trigger guard here looks a little bit too elongated, like it's stretched out. And the gun handle certainly is pretty wide, but that's the sacrifice that they have to make in terms of getting the proper leg proportions. So this is a really tough figure, or tough character to really produce properly and get an accurate alt mode and robot mode that looks proper. I think for the most part it's pretty clean. A lot of nice little sculpted details. A bit of a bummer that the safety doesn't work on the back here. I wish that actually could move up and down like Apollyon. It does have the P38 actually sort of engraved there on the front, which is a nice little detail right there, which I dig. That's a bit of an eyesore. That sort of sliding mechanism along the gun barrel and this big screw there too. Definitely not the cleanest way they could have presented that. But I think for the most part, it's a fairly nice representation of a handgun. The handle is big. I have relatively big hands. I'm a fairly big guy. But that even feels like a bit of a stretch for me to be holding this. But it doesn't look that off, or it doesn't look that bad. It would have been nice if they had included some accessories. Again, another aspect I think Apollyon wins out is it actually has the nozzle attachment as well as the gun stock attachment on the back. This is a bit bare bones. You got your weapon and your sight, and that's about it. So not bad. I think it's very much a serviceable representation of Megatron. There's no mistaking what this is supposed to be representing. I think it really hits enough of the sort of design cues of what the P38 actually looks like. So, you know, it's definitely not perfect, but it's more than serviceable, and it's a pretty nice representation. Alright guys, so final thoughts for Maketoys Despotron. You can see him there with Optimus looking pretty damn sharp. Anyway, I'm not someone who's too keen on the Maketoys extra style or flair that they like to throw onto their remaster series. And initially, this figure was probably trending towards the not scratching that itch that well for me either. But I gotta say, having this figure in hand, it's pretty telling. They did a lot of things correct with this figure. It's not perfect, you know, they really needed to iron out some of these tolerance issues, like in the hips, this sliding knee mechanism. This piece gets a little floppy on the back too if you don't pose it just right. The ankles also have had a tendency to kind of lean forward or lean backwards, and I've heard some people having their figure fall off their shelf. So be careful with how you're posing it. But aside from that, the proportions, things like that that bothered me, they really don't creep up here, having it in hand. I think proportionally it works. It has sort of that hybrid G1 cartoon / comic book bulk to it. Sort of anime influenced as well. He looks really sharp. And it's just a really elegant design. I mean, even like down to just the lower legs, that nice sort of curve and profile, how slender that they look right there. Even the back is super clean with almost no kibble to speak of. Just really impressive all around. I mean, I have to really applaud Maketoys here because they really made me a believer in this figure. From someone such as myself that just was not too hyped up for this release leading up to it. So a lot of great ideas, excellent execution. They just needed to clean up some tolerances. It probably could have been a close to perfect figure if they had done so. I still wish they had a different head sculpt. This one just doesn't really win me over. I think a lot of that, again, does relate to that forehead design. And some of that extra detailing that I just don't really want on my Megatron figure. But overall, again, in hand, it looks and feels very good and a lot better. I don't think it photographed very well, to be perfectly honest, but it's a little bit less obnoxious actually seeing it in person. I have to also say that, you know, the transformation on this is exceptionally fun and a lot of really cool ideas that I was not expecting. You know, the way they actually unfolded the upper torso to sort of extend the body of the gun and have the legs rotate 90 degrees to kind of peg in front to back versus clipping them side to side. A lot of really uniquely and well executed ideas that really just makes this a fun figure to pick up and mess around with, not only in the robot mode, but actually picking him up and transforming him, unlike Apollyon, which can be a bit tedious. And that's coming from someone that actually really enjoyed the Apollyon transformation. This is night and day, a much more simple affair, getting him into his P38 handgun and back into robot mode. And as I kind of stated before, he's not only a good representation or a good-looking Megatron, but he's also just super fun to pick up and pose. I mean, you can really get some dynamic looks for this figure, and it's just a lot of fun to handle and, you know, mess around with. It almost has an action figure sort of quality to him, on top of being a really hyper-articulated and hyper-detailed, Megatron representations. So should you buy this figure? Yeah, absolutely. If you like that stylized look, this oozes personality, has the articulation, has the polish, has the paint detail, looks phenomenal. Might be a little bit lacking in some of the tolerances like we touched on. It lacks a little bit in the accessory department, especially for the gun. But this, for me, easily fills that Megatron, void on my shelf. I like it quite a bit. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Appreciate it. Got some more stuff coming out soon, including X-Transbot's Beachcomber, or Arcos, and Andros also coming as well, or Scourge. So stay tuned, and more stuff coming soon. Have a great day, guys.